Hi, so this cabin that I'm in right now is what they call Air Canada's signature business class. And it's actually been flying around for quite a while now on their 777s and Dreamliners, more than half a decade actually. And when it comes to business class products, it's one of the nicer ones, definitely. It has a really nice mattress, you got a lot of space to yourself, and a lot of privacy to go with that. But there are also a couple of problems that some of the more discerning frequent flyers seem to always be complaining about. For example, the tray table. While it works just fine as a tray table, when you put it back into its stowage, it doesn't go in very far, and as a result, it leads to problems when you're trying to sleep as it does get in the way of your hips and thighs. Another divisive topic are the dividers between the middle seats. They don't go down like you would expect them to. But these are just some minor gripes. While I do think that the only organization more corrupt than Skytrax is the North Korean regime, I will agree with the former when they say that Air Canada has the best business class experience in North America. But keep what I said in mind because as of a few days ago, or rather yesterday, Air Canada has a new aircraft that has the signature class business class on board and a new premium economy cabin and a new economy, actually has like all new cabins throughout the aircraft. And that's why I'm here in Vancouver, to go to Montreal. I'm also here for a little bit of like legitimate work, but for the purposes of this video, you can just disregard that. And of course, this plane that I'm talking about is the Airbus A330, but you probably knew that already from the title of this video. Unfortunately, I don't have a very good shot of the plane to show you. Just from the way it's parked, it's pretty hard to get a decent angle. Oh my! Ladies and gentlemen, look who I found. It is ELWIN from One More Week to Go. Fancy bumping into you here.
You invited me out to lunch, buddy.
Okay, let's not get bogged down by who invited who out to lunch, okay? Let's get to the important part. Can I borrow your photo?
Sure. I mean, what's in it for me, though?
I'll let you drive me to the airport. After I skillfully convinced ELWIN that it was a good deal, he did drop me off at the airport in his beautifully futuristic car, which he has given a name to. Yeah, Tesla drivers are a weird bunch. My flight today will be departing out of Vancouver, which, despite being the largest city, is not the capital of British Columbia, and I'll be headed over to Montreal, which is also not the capital of British Columbia. Back at the airport, things were a little, well, closed. So this is Air Canada's domestic check-in hall, which, as you can see behind me, has pretty much been completely abandoned. They've moved everything over to the international section in a bit to save on manpower and make things a little bit more efficient since there aren't that many people traveling right now. It's a little bit sad, but also kind of interesting. Despite things starting to open back up here in Canada, there was still a very small fraction of flights being operated compared to the usual numbers, and the flights that were running were quite spaced out from one another. And on the topic of space, there was a ton of it in the international check-in area where most of the action was handled by the automated kiosks. The priority section from across the main area was also up and running. However, the same isn't true for the security point where there were no priority lines, and with the checkpoints operating at half capacity for social distancing, there was a considerable wait. On the other side of security, things weren't much better as all the Maple Leaf lounges remained closed. And to clarify, I mean all Air Canada lounges everywhere in the world were closed. I think now is a good time to show you the photo ELWIN sent me, and on a serious note, do check out his channel, his videos are so well made. Back on topic, this is the plane that I'll be taking today. Delivered new to Air Canada all the way back in 2000, she is getting on quite a bit. But you know what they say, airplanes are like houses, it doesn't matter how old they are, as long as they can fly. Weirdly, despite what I said about the flights being spaced out, the 777 going to Toronto boarded at the gate next to ours, at the exact same time as ours, down to the minute. But I'll gloss over that since the load factors on these flights were only in the high teens, and at this point I was too excited for the new cabins to care. At first glance, these seats may look very similar to the ones on the Boeing planes, but upon closer inspection, there are subtleties to be noticed, as these are the latest generation of the Collins Aerospace Super Diamond seats. It's apparent that Air Canada has chosen to retain the slate gray and Arctic white motif, as it is in line with the rest of the premium offerings in the fleet. With the touches of wood on the table and the side panel, it does a good job embodying the understated yet sophisticated nature of the Canadian bourgeoisie, while at the same time using a palette of materials that pay homage to the natural landscape. Yes, I do realize that I'm now talking out of my ass, but I really do like this cabin. Moreover, the product feels very clean, almost sterile, which given current affairs is probably not a bad thing. Business class is organized into one cabin in a 1-to-1 configuration. The 8 rows of seats add up to 32 in total. When picking your seats, it may be prudent to avoid 8 Alpha and Kilo, that's A and K, the last row of window seats, since they're missing windows. I'll go over the premium economy cabin later on in the video, but for now, we're staying in business, and with that, it's time to do a tediously comprehensive seat tour. Starting off as always with the IFE display, this one is the smallest out of the 3 variants of this cabin. Moving on to the tray table, there's an updated mechanism as it slides out diagonally and then horizontally, meaning you can position it however you want. It folds out to give you more surface area, and it is still very sturdy. The wood is fake though, but pretty sure you knew that already. Once again, it doesn't stow in very far, so we'll have to see what that means for legroom later on when I try out the bed. And on the subject of legroom, there's a generous amount, about the same as on the Dreamliners, but not nearly as much as on the 777s. Still, nothing to complain about here. And off to this side over here, where on the other planes you'll find a magazine rack, there is instead nothing, well apart from the life vest. Back up here, this first cubby provides tons of space for just the media remote. Yeah, I don't really understand it either. It was probably a sacrifice made for something else, but at the very least the remote is pretty nice. We'll have a closer look at it later. Okay, I guess we're having a closer look at it now. You see, the problem is past me and present me don't always have the same idea as to how to do these things. Actually, going back on what I said, you can store some things in this cubby. For example, a transit card, or perhaps the stub of a boarding pass, and yeah, that's actually just about it. Anyhow, moving on to the rear compartment, it has a lot more usable space. It's also home to the headphone ports, USB Type A and C charging ports, and a universal power outlet. To illustrate its size, it's just about big enough to fit a passport in here at this awkward angle, or this awkward angle, or this awkward angle, mostly because the whole thing is just an awkward angle. Back here is the new home of the magazine rack. Now, some airlines use this space to be creative, but not Air Canada. They'd rather just have a big slab of metal and plastic. All too familiar reading light, which is still not dimmable, but it does rotate. And here is what the seat itself looks like. The cushion is no longer inflatable, but that's a blessing given how often it broke. Also note the addition of the shoulder strap for the seatbelt, which is detachable. Longtime viewers will know how much I struggle with these. Okay, moving on. Looks like the amenity kit arrived, which these days is just a packet of gloves, mask, wipes, and hand sanitizer, and some earbuds. I would like to point out the curvaceous nature of the pods themselves. It's very elegant and in with the times, what with big butts being all the craze. Oh, and the woeful excuse of a coat hook is, well, still woeful. Moving on to the aisle side, the armrest has had a refresh and now opens up to reveal another storage space, and this is where you'll find the provided headphones, which are currently not available during COVID. The armrest also comes up like this, and here, I know you want to see what it looks like on the outside, so let me show you. In its lowered position, this armrest means that you can get out of your seat pretty easily even when the tray table is deployed. Alright, you might have thought that I missed this, but I didn't, I just saved it for last. This new control panel does away with the physical buttons, everything is now on the touchscreen. The seat back and leg rest are still individually adjustable, as are the 4 directions of the lumbar support. The tepid massage function makes a return, but the adjustable firmness of the cushioning does not. As I said, it's no longer inflatable. There's a button for the dome light, an FA call button, and a do not disturb function. On the overhead paneling, it looks like they just kept the old consoles, as there are no individually adjustable air vents, and it looks kinda worn out. Similarly, the overhead bins are still the original spec, not really a problem up here in business, but the lack of luggage space will probably be more pronounced in the back. The aisles are noticeably more narrow than on the Dreamliners, but that does mean they didn't sacrifice seat width, and that, as I'm sure you'll agree, is a good thing. And if you're wondering what this thing is, it's a step so that the vertically challenged people can also reach the overhead bins. Overall, despite the older plane, this cabin refresh comes as a welcome sight since it was about time. Compared to the outgoing hard product, it's night and day. Literally, as mood lighting is now a thing. And finally, yes, the middle seats now do have dividers that you can open and close. To address something that may be pretty obvious, I did take this flight when the airline's COVID restrictions were still in place, and as such, many aspects of the service were still missing. And when I say many, I mean pretty much all of the service. Typically on these transcontinental signature class flights, you get thick duvets and comfy pillows, noise-canceling headphones, pre-departure drinks, post-departure drinks. Actually, you get all the drinks you want. That's their ploy to win over alcoholics in denial like myself. There's also a 4-course meal, and all of it with consistently good service. If you want to see what the good life was like back in the day, and hopefully sometime soon again, I made a video going over the service in detail, which I'll link below. But on this flight of comparative austerity, I'm going to make the best of it and show you the things that I still can, and the rest, well, you can piece that together yourself. Also, I'm pretty sure that many of you are missing the views from up here like I did, so here's a little montage. Okay, I'm not sure what that was, but let's start things off by checking out the Wi-Fi, which is fairly straightforward and no gimmicks here. On Air Canada, it's hosted by GoGo In-Flight, with full flight unlimited packages topping out at around 22 Canadian dollars for flights longer than 4 hours. The connection is usually pretty good, often enough to watch YouTube videos in 720p. The drawback though is that you can only connect one device at a time, so if you want to switch between devices during a flight, make sure you make an account. Alternatively, there are monthly plans, but those cost upwards of $70 with tax per month, so it only makes sense if you fly often enough. Annoyingly, there are no day passes, so if you have connections, well, you're shit out of luck. You'll have to buy internet for each segment. 15 minutes after takeoff, the food arrived, which is less impressive when you account for the fact that these are cold, pre-packaged lunchboxes, which do not require any form of onboard preparation. Anyways, I'll head to the bathroom to wash my hands. Not exactly sure what I try to do with the camera move here, but anyways, here's the updated bathroom, which is actually very pleasant. If you've ever been on an A330neo, this is almost the exact same bathroom. I'm quite appreciative of the fact that these counter spaces are flat. You can actually put stuff down, unlike the poorly designed curve counters on Dreamliners. Beginning to think that Europeans just make better bathrooms altogether. Bizarrely, apart from the soap, they had some hand products in here. Probably an oversight, as these are very good transmission vectors for diseases. I wouldn't recommend using these after washing your hands. Not for now, anyways. There is an adjustable air nozzle in here, and overall the bathrooms were all decently spacious, and there are 3 of them in total adjacent to the business class cabin. Alright, back to the food box. If you think this is bad, wait until you hear what they get in economy and premium economy. They get water. Just water, even on the longest 14-hour flights, so be sure to bring your own food if you are in those cabins. Anyways, on this flight, this is what constituted for my dinner. The salad wasn't all that great, but at least the chicken wrap was decent. And needless to say, the food service didn't take nearly as long as the usual 4-course meal they serve, but at the very least there's a very decent IFE system to kill time with, so let's go ahead and check that out now. Like I said before, this new screen is smaller in size than the others, but it is sharper. It's 6K actually, which is very impressive, although that might just be my seat number. Anyways, I had the pleasure of talking to the head of the team who designed this product earlier in the year, and he's given me a lot of insight. This new interface was made by the guys who did Hulu's, and it runs on Android. This means that the backend gets frequently updated, and as a result, it's comfortably responsive. Although it still took a while to access some content menus, but that's probably restricted by the read speed of the hard drives. At any rate, it's much better than the IFE on the old product. Before I get too technical, let's go over the content. Air Canada tots an impressive selection of new releases and timeless classics alike, so anyone should be able to find something to their taste. For the frequent flyers who might have just watched everything, the saving grace comes from the TV shows. They have a lot of programs in their entirety on here, in some cases 20 seasons. For me especially, the HBO shows have helped kill a lot of time. The route map is the latest offering from the makers of Flight Map 3D. You have free reign over the map, allowing you to pan, zoom, and rotate to your AvGeek heart's desire. There are rudimentary maps for all the major cities and some accompanying city guides, but no outboard cameras. If there were, the Canadian geese might file an invasion of privacy complaint. For us airplane weirdos, there's also a page full of details of their fleet. With 3 hours left in the flight and having woken up at 5 that morning to go to Vancouver, I was pooped and thus eager to take a nap. The bed folds flat as you would expect, and it looks like this. In terms of the legroom situation, it was actually very restrictive. There's a lot less space for your lower legs and feet than I had imagined, and the table situation hasn't improved. In fact, I think the mechanism actually takes more space away. This meant that for people who haven't had their hips surgically removed, sleeping on your side is impossible. Nevertheless, it was still very private since you are cocooned by the walls of the pod. Privacy as a whole isn't really an issue in general, since the walls and offset positioning of each seat still makes it very difficult to see other passengers. As you can imagine, not much else went on with the rest of the flight. I watched a documentary and did some work, and eventually we began our descent into Montreal. Now, this is typically when I give you my final thoughts on the flight, but I'm not quite done here just yet. Okay, so you might have noticed that this video is nowhere close to being done, and that's because I promised you that I'll show you the premium economy cabin, and that's a promise I intend to keep. But the flight attendants on that flight, fantastic as they were, looked really tired by the end of it, so I didn't want to keep them up any longer than I had to, get a couple of shots in. So to that end, I have a plan, but that first involves me going to bed. So let's pick this action up tomorrow, which to you should only be about a second. Hi, good morning. You know when I said that I couldn't get a good shot of the plane from yesterday? Well, it turns out that it's parked right outside my hotel room. There she is. And, well, there's another one of them. Say what you will about Marriott, but I didn't have to interact with a single person while I was here, so that's kind of nice. Okay, getting back on track. I am not going back on yesterday's plane. It was fantastic, but that aircraft is going back to Vancouver, and there's no reason for me to go back to Vancouver. So instead, we're gonna do the next best thing. And when I say next best thing, this is what I mean. And I know what you're gonna say, that that's an A220, not an A330, but hear me out. The business class on that thing is almost identical to the premium economy on the A330, so that's what I'm doing. To illustrate my point, this is what the premium economy cabin looks like on the A330. And for comparison, here's what the business class looks like on the A220. In terms of the seats, they're identical down to the last thread. I was actually on the inaugural flight of this thing back in January, and of course there's a video of that somewhere. But back to the point, as you can see, these seats are brand new and they have a pretty good amount of legroom. Just so you know, the footrest is not available in the front row. There are two buttons on the armrest, one for the recline and another for the leg rest, which is my favorite new addition, as these things can make a huge difference for comfort on longer flights. Forward of the center console and easily missed is this pop-out drink tray. Back here, the armrest lifts for access to the cubby space. It's padded on the bottom and the perfect place to store a laptop or tablet. There's a universal power outlet in here, as well as a headphone jack. On the other side, the armrest is home to the tray table, which you can deploy without the peril of losing a finger thanks to a latch and updated system. It folds out like this, and there's very little give. The Wi-Fi runs the same software as in business, and I know for a fact that this one is 1080p. Underneath, there's more I/O for your headphones, and two varieties of USB charging ports. The recline is still quite generous, and overall, this premium economy seat is probably one of the best out there. It definitely adds a lot to the value proposition of this cabin and a big step up from the older products. I'll definitely be very content spending 10 hours or more here, and will probably do so in the future. Okay, this is perhaps a little nuanced, but I'll give you my final thoughts on the new Airbus A330 product, while I'll show you footage of my short flight home to Toronto on this A220 Bombardier bus. For a couple of years, the A330s in Air Canada's fleet have been somewhat of the black sheep. Apart from economy, the two premium cabins didn't really offer anything comparable to the newer, better hardware on the 777 and 787. As a result, many travelers avoided these planes if they could. But everything changes with these new cabins, as business class is now more or less on par with the other two products, and premium economy, well, for now, this cabin is the best Air Canada has to offer in this segment. Personally, when I'm flying on my own dime, I book an economy, as it's quite easy to get upgraded to at least premium, so I am really looking forward to long trips in this cabin. But even if I don't get upgraded, I wouldn't mind spending a long flight in the economy cabin. It's been updated with seats that match the rest of the fleet, and most importantly, the newest IFE as well. Plus, the 242 layout is preferable both to larger families and couples, such as my girlfriend and me. The A330 as a business strategy also makes sense for Air Canada, as it seems. It's still relatively fuel efficient, and on high demand short and medium haul routes, it can be more so than the Dreamliner. And we have quite a few of those medium haul routes from Canada, especially the transatlantic ones. Not to mention, these planes were also cheaper to buy than more Dreamliners or the newly engined A330s. Bottom line is, Air Canada's grand strategy of having consistent products on all their planes is one step closer to fruition. Hopefully, I've given you a glimpse of what's to come. This plane was the first to have these new cabins, but by this time next year, all 12 in the fleet should be updated. As always, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was either educational or at the very least entertaining. And I know you're watching this, Mom, and I love you. And for the rest of you, well, until I see you again, safe travels.